Welcome to LiberTea, the videocast series from the European Liberal Forum. I'm your host, Ricardo Silvestre. And today's episode, it's about the freedom of optimism. And on that, Winston Churchill said, "For myself, I am an optimist. It does not seem to be much of use for anything else." He also said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." Ellen Keller said, "Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence." And to talk about all things optimism, I am joined by the right person, which is Mathias Sundin. Mathias, thank you so much for coming to the videocast.
Thank you very much, and thank you for traveling all the way to Karlshamn, Sweden.
Oh, it's great to be here. Matthias, you are the co-founder and executive chairman of Warp Institute. The mission is to make a better future come sooner by sourcing and accelerating ideas and initiatives to the intersection of innovation and optimism. And you yourself, you are a speaker on TED Talks. You are also a ex-member of parliament. So you've done many things and you have all your path to get to this point where you actually actively working in having optimism as a solution for everyday problems and for, as you said, to make the world better and the future come sooner. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so it grew out of frustration over many years. First, I started reading stats, listened to Hans Rosling, read Johan Norberg, Steven Pinker, people like that, and I saw the world is moving in the right direction. Everything that is important in the world, like extremely important things like poverty and extreme poverty is decreasing really fast. 137,000 people have left extreme poverty every day since 1990, every day. And that's just one of thousands of things that's moving in the right direction. But I saw that most people don't notice. They think things are moving in the opposite direction. It's not just that they a little bit ignorant. They think it's getting worse and worse. I also saw that I got increasingly frustrated and angry by the news media. There's so many negative headlines about almost everything, but especially about new technologies. So I saw that of course that is a big part why people are pessimistic about the future and think the world is getting worse, I think. But also it leads to people missing opportunities because of that. So out of that grew, and in politics, I worked a lot with new technology in many different areas. And so there's so many opportunities here, and I got increasingly frustrated and angry. I started complaining about people complaining, and then I realized, am I helping? So out of that grew the Warp Institute. First, as just an idea, we had a few meetups. We started a little Facebook group, but then I saw, then I realized if we can bring optimistic, forward-looking people that want to have a positive impact, that want to be part of creating future, can we bring them into a community, a global community? That could be really powerful. Then we can really make the future come sooner and make people a little bit more optimistic, turn the pessimists, today you see pessimists as so rational or having some sort of intelligent thought, but I think they're the naive ones. So we want to turn that around. So that's part of the that led to starting the foundation that is the Warp Institute, and me not running for re-election in 2018.
We're going to talk about the Warp Institute in a second, but for our viewers that may think, well, this is all very theoretically, and I'm sure people can be optimistic, but what is the benefit? In fact, the University of Rochester Medical Center, in a meta-analysis of 80 studies, show that optimism has a remarkable impact on physical health, overall longevity, survival from disease, heart health, immunity system, cancer fighting, pregnancy development, and pain tolerance. Actually, this affects physiology, it affects neurology. So what is the transition in your opinion from that particular observation to the one that is the active day-to-day working in this field?
I think for me at least, the superpower of being an optimist is that you have more ideas. There's also research for that. So And it's pretty logical. Optimists are more open to other people's ideas. So, of course, if you get exposed to more ideas, and especially from different viewpoints, you yourself get more ideas. And it's not just that optimists sit there and have a lot of ideas and do nothing about them. Because if you're optimistic, you're pretty good at envisioning a future, a positive, optimistic future. You dream about things. And when you do that, you of course want to be part of creating that future, or you're more inclined to do that. It's like, wow, that would be amazing. What can I do to help achieve that? So optimists, they don't just have more ideas, they do more with the ideas, they take more action. And part of that is also when you run into problems, as you always do when you start a new project, especially if it's a big, audacious, idea of really changing things, you run into obstacles, problems, things like that, and you have to overcome them. And if you have this positive vision there, you have this clear goal of where you want to go, like optimists have, they're less inclined to give up. So they fight on and try to break through these obstacles. So that's a great skill set to have. And imagine if we could make 5% of the world a little bit more optimistic. We would have more ideas in the world. We would have more people trying to achieve those dreams and ideas, and we will then make the future come sooner.
Those are great points, and let me do a follow-up on that, because if you're thinking about, and you just mentioned it very nicely, so if you're thinking about the individual to the community, and then to the community to the globe, from your experience, what kind of pathways can our viewers think of themselves going through to have that kind of influence?
First, I would say try to connect with like-minded people. And I don't mean people with the exact same ideas, but optimistic, forward-looking people. I used to be in politics, and I had I was in the minority for most of my days in politics. So I was very pessimistic myself, or complaining a lot. If they did something right, the people in the the parties in the majority, I had to say but it was too late or too little, or So, but now, when I left politics and only surrounded myself with these kind of optimistic, forward-looking people, it's great for your mental health. You feel better and you have more drive. So that's my first thing. Surround yourself with people like that. But for me, and I guess there's many ways to become more optimistic. But for me, it has been it's the facts out there. So I 20 years ago or so, I was like any person, I wasn't overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. I was just sort of a normal in that way. But then I read the first book I read was Johan Norberg, In Defense of Global Capitalism, and I realized he has a lot of stats in that book, and I realized, okay, there's a lot of things in the world going right, and this was 20 years ago. There's a lot of things. And then I discovered Hans Rosling. I saw a talk by him, checked the stats from Gapminder. So all of that led me to become more and more optimistic. I realized, okay, we're doing something really well here with humanity. We still have big problems, definitely, but we can solve them. So surrounding yourself by optimistic people, and for me at least, been checking the facts, the stats, that have turned me into an optimist.
Again, we're going to go into Warp Institute in a second, because one thing Mathias done, and very nicely and powerfully so, you have a newsletter of optimists, news and good news. But tell me again, from your experience in talking about this with experts in the field, what drives people to always see, the dark side in things? Because I imagine some of our viewers right now thinking, yeah, but I always get bombarded by the same bad news all the time. And in one private conversation you had with me, it's like, yeah, well, a bus can roll over and 1,000 airplanes don't crash, but people will be drawn to the bus that rolled over. So what do you think, of course we're not psychologists, you and I, but what do you think that drive comes from?
I guess there are many reasons. One is that maybe the news media in itself think that that's the only thing that sells, and they've seen that sells, so they keep doing the same kind of stories over and over again. But I also think maybe this has been very helpful in the past. 100,000 years ago, it's a pretty good idea to be a little bit pessimistic or a bit cautious.
True,
at
yeah.
least.
To get away from the lions.
Exactly. If there's a possibility there's a saber-toothed tiger over there, you just don't want to go and check out and be optimistic and hopeful. Probably nothing. It's an animal I can hunt. No, you're hunted. So. But we don't live in a dangerous world like that anymore. We don't. So Hans Rosling compared it to sugar. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was great. If you could stuff yourself with sugar in different, fruits or whatever, that was awesome. Do it as much as possible because you don't know where the next opportunity will occur. But today, we're not running out of sugar. The problem is that we eat too much sugar, so we have to control that. And the same thing I think is if you keep feeding yourself with negative news. What do you think will happen? It's pretty obvious. So you must take control of that.
Yeah. And a follow up on that, and let's not talk about sugar because the brain starts getting all jiggly. From your experience, when you find those people that come to you and say, since I found your work, I'm seeing more positive things, I'm functioning more on a positive attitude. How does that shift? Only again from your experience, how does that shift happen? What makes people change from one setting to the other? I'm interested because some of our viewers could be like, all right, I'm always there, but there's something missing. What is it?
I think it's when you actually get proof that things are moving in the right direction. It's hard to, for a while you maybe, but there's still huge problems, things like that. But I think part of the shift is realizing you two things can be true at the same time. So extreme poverty, again, it's a perfect example. Hundreds of millions, over billions of people have left extreme poverty. But still, hundreds of millions of people are still living in extreme poverty. That's a huge problem, but it's getting better, and it's getting better fast. So extreme poverty is a huge problem for humanity, but it's a problem that it's getting smaller and smaller. So I think that's part of the shift, and then you can see, if you see the background there, you can be very optimistic that we can actually solve poverty, that no human being have to live in poverty, maybe in just 10 or 15 years. So I think that's part of the shift, actually getting proof of progress.
And reading, you mentioned Steven Pinker, it's a great book, but also Greg Easterbrook in the United States with the progress paradox, which is things are getting better. People always think that things are getting worse. So again, as you said, there's a shift on that duality. The other reason to have you on the videocast is that you are the co-founder and the executive chairman of Warp Institute, which you guys do a fantastic work. I follow your work very closely. And you are in the front lines. You are not just theoretically, you're doing this in practice. So tell us some of the work you do and the Warp Institute does.
Yeah, so the mission for the foundation is to make the future come sooner. We want these positive things going on to happen a lot faster than they do today.
Which is a great tagline. Congratulations for that one.
Thanks. So that is the mission. Okay, how do you make the future come sooner? Well, I think by gathering optimistic, forward-looking people in a community, bring them together, let them share ideas. We share knowledge with them, and they together will come up with, they will hopefully become even more optimistic and influence others to be more optimistic, but they will come up with a lot of ideas and start companies and projects and organizations and things like that. That will move us into the future. So, but you can't do all of that, from the start. There's so many things you can do. So what we've started with is news.
Yes.
Since so much of the pessimism comes from news media, we started with Warp News, that is fact-based, optimistic news. So first off, the news in itself hopefully will turn people more optimistic. They will see all the good things going on out there in the world. But an important part of that is also in the community here is what we call the Optimists Edge. Mm-hmm. So if you have a fact-based optimistic view of the world, you have an edge just by having that. Because then you will see a lot of things, you will have facts on things that are actually going on that most people have no idea about, or especially they often think things are moving in the other direction. that's what we're providing our community, and they can take those insights and do whatever they like with them, start companies or invest or whatever it is.
So as we're getting to the end of our time together, and thank you so much for coming to the videocast, and it's great to be here in lovely Karlshamn in Sweden. Tell our viewers, how can they get involved and how can they make a difference here?
I think the first thing is to realize today, with the internet and the world we have, every person out there has a real chance to have a big impact. Whatever they want to do, there is a bigger chance, there's a bigger opportunity than ever before. I see a lot of surveys of kids, teenagers, being very, very pessimistic about the future. But that generation has a bigger opportunity than any generation before them to make a positive impact in the world. So that's the first thing everyone should realize. Whatever it is, you have a bigger opportunity than before. It's not going to be easy. You have to work really hard at it, but the opportunity is bigger. The other thing is I think is start to find, look behind the negative news headlines, check the facts for yourself, see what insights you can gain from that. Of course, people are much welcome to follow Warp News. Sign up for the free newsletter. You get at least once a week in your inbox. You have a newsletter full of just optimistic news. But then the third thing that we talked about before, surround yourself, start finding the optimists out there. It's awesome. They're awesome to be around, but you're going to come up with more ideas and be more creative and do much more out of that.
I'm going to put all the links for this on the description of the episode. I've been talking with Mathias Sundin, co-founder, executive chairman of Warp Institute. Mathias, thank you so much for talking to me.
Well, thank you very much for having me and being here in Sweden, traveling all the way.